Hello and welcome to the CX Files for Thursday, 24th November 2022. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm now back in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
I'm Peter Ryan. I'm coming to you today from London, England. Delighted to be with you, Mark. It was nice to see you last week as well.
Yeah, good to catch up in person. You know, can never beat a meeting in a London pub.
Especially in the middle of a busy train station.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this week we're going to talk about distributed work and GigCX and everything that they've been up to at Limitless. And I know that you had a chat with their CEO and founder, Roger Beadle.
Yeah, Roger and I got to catch up most recently, and Roger is really, I think, one of the most interesting people in our space. Certainly what he has been able to do by founding Limitless, by moving Limitless really into one of the pole position companies for GigCX delivery is, in my opinion, truly remarkable, especially as you'll hear in the discussion, Mark, and as our listeners will hear, we are talking about a company and a process of distributing a labor force that's not centered on one specific geography or one specific industry, but it's truly going pan-vertical and it's truly going cross-global.
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is not just how people are paid, but the kind of new opportunities that it opens. You know, if you create a completely flexible labor force that doesn't need to be doing 8-hour shifts, then it just creates new opportunities.
Exactly, and this is one of the elements that Roger touched on in the chat that we had. And I think more broadly speaking, we're talking about, as I say, a workforce model that is really adapting to the needs of today's labor force and towards what today's agent or prospective agent is looking to try and do. They don't necessarily, as we've talked about in this podcast many times, want to be tied down to an 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5 job 5 days a week. They want to be able to work on their own terms. They want to be able to work on their own times, and they want to work supporting brands that they really believe in.
I think that's also, I think that's also one of the very important aspects here, that we're looking at agents that can actually choose the brands that they represent. And it also works both ways, because it means that the agent really wants to work for that specific brand. So therefore they deliver a better service for the brand.
This is exactly it, Mark. And to that point, I think that what we're going to be seeing more and more, and this is something, again, Roger will touch on in the interview that our listeners will hear, is that this is becoming much more of a reality for different organizations, regardless of what space they're in, regardless of what function they're looking to service. GigCX has applicability truly much more today and moving forward than it ever has. And those forward-looking CX managers on the in-house or on the captive basis are truly going to be embracing this, and also embracing the organizations that are able to provide GigCX as a working model for them to deliver the best interactions.
Okay, so why don't we go straight to the interview with Roger Beadle, the CEO at Limitless.
The CX Files is really lucky this week to be welcoming for the first time to the podcast an old friend of both myself and of my co-host Mark Hillary's, and that is Roger Beadle, who is the CEO and co-founder of Limitless. So Roger joins us from his residence in the Greater London area. Really excited to have him here. Roger, thanks for taking a few minutes to chat with us today.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for having me. I've been a great admirer of the CX Files for some time, and I'm very, very pleased that you've invited me to join you today. Thank you very much.
Well, the pleasure is ours. And for full disclosure, Roger and I saw each other very recently in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, for the annual CX Outsourcers Conference. And Roger, it was great to have you in Vegas for the event. Just out of curiosity, what were some of the key takeaways that came out of that discussion forum for yourself personally?
Well, I think I was particularly interested with some of the topics around the growth, for example, in Africa. I found that particularly interesting. and also, there was a great discussion on kind of the metaverse and and how that may well impact the world of customer experience over the coming years, and I'm sure it will do. And other topics around how expert well-being and well-being within the customer service industry, and I think some really interesting topics. And of course, one close to my heart, which is new emerging ways of resourcing within the CX industry.
And I think that really segues nicely into our topic of discussion today, and that is new delivery models of CX. And Roger, when you think about it, adapting business models, adapting the way CX is delivered really does have an impact on well-being of the individuals who are on the front lines. This is a big topic of discussion right now. And I'd be curious if you could talk to us a little bit based on what you're seeing in the market when you're talking to prospects or even existing clients. When it comes to GigCX, what's driving interest in this way of delivering customer experience in the current state of play?
Well, there's quite a few things that are driving the interest, both from a company's perspective, but also from the actual experts. We call the people that work on the Limitless GigCX platform experts. From a company's perspective, I think some of the key drivers are the availability of talent. I think, with lots of changes in the world from a macroeconomics perspective, the availability of talent, the change in demographics, the rising volume and numbers of obviously the Gen Zs that are entering the workplace, and how they want to work is changing. What the channels that they want to use, and whether they want to work within contact centers and work within a kind of scheduled environment. So the availability of talent is a key driver. We're also seeing the need for different skills and specialist skills. The complexity of what is rising within the contact center. So people often talk a little bit about some of that kind of more transactional demand is moving to and has continued to move for over 15 years to self-serve channels, just different kinds of self-service channels. However, the length of time it takes to resolve and the complexity of some of that resolution is rising. So the skills are really important. And so coupled with an availability of talent and rising skills, the shortage of specific skills is a big driver. And just this overarching need for agility. One of the big reasons that we conceptualized the whole GigCX model 6-7 years back, Megan and I, my co-founder Megan, was just to create more fluidity within the resourcing pool. That was one of the big challenges we wanted to face in the industry. How could we get more flexibility? Because to meet this unexpected demand throughout the day, year, month, etc., you needed that greater agility. So that kind of move from fixed resourcing models to more fluid resourcing models was one of our drivers, and we're still seeing that in the industry today. From an expert's perspective, so from people looking to work, that's really driving now. And if you think about what we're seeing for now and into 2023 with the cost of living and the rising cost of living globally, many people are looking for ways to top up their incomes, find additional ways to work. And we now have over 25,000 people on our waiting list. So 25,000 people are waiting to have an opportunity to work on behalf of some of the brands that we're supporting. And in addition to the cost of living, people are looking to work more remotely and more flexibly. So I think these are key drivers that are sort of powering the kind of GigCX momentum at this moment.
And it's interesting that you talk about the availability issue, because I have spoken with 4 or 5 different people over the course of the last few days, and we're discussing trends in 2023. One of the things that I get consistently, no matter if it's in Western Europe, in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, the whole story is the same, that the traditional labor market and the availability of talent is not going to get better next year, that we're still anticipating that there's going to be problems. So my question to you, from this ability to find more agile pools of labor, the skills and the availability of this talent, Is this a phenomenon that is, in terms of the interest in GigCX, is this being driven in one or two particular regions, or are you finding this is consistent across major demand markets around the world?
And again, from a company's and from an expert's perspective, what we find are major enterprises are generally looking for solutions on a global scale. So one of the benefits of a GigCX platform and solution like ours is the ability to work with one partner, because when the model is deployed, it's the same for every market globally. It's a global platform. Instantaneously, you could set up and have crowds of experts working in pretty much any country in the world. So you could resource for a particular language requirement you might have, or particular skills, or particular products, or particular market where you need to address the resourcing challenge. So I think that's an important thing to put straight out there, is that the GigCX platform works on that kind of global scale. And we're currently supporting clients in over 50 countries, just to back that up. And we're doing so in North America, LATAM. So Brazil is a really rising and emerging market in terms of demand. We do handle a lot of volume from customers contacting global brands out of the South America, in particular Brazil. EMEA, of course, a classic major market, but also Asia. We're supporting brands all the way from India all the way right down through to Australia and New Zealand. So it absolutely is. We're seeing something that's represented on a global scale. And if you think about why, it addresses some of the challenges. It is quite costly. It's always been the case in the EMEA European market to provide support across all the various languages is really challenging for organizations to do so in a cost-effective way. So again, a GigCX model is really very helpful for that. There's a concept of course, following the sun, which I'm sure all of the listeners will be very, very, very familiar with the term. But this is obviously where you can provide support 24/7, and you have support in each of the major regions of the world, which means that you always have people that are working throughout the day. Now, again, a global platform, GigCX, really helps you achieve such a global operating model, but without having to go and set up locations and agree partnerships and with all various kinds of organizations all over the world. So you can kind of instantaneously, again, within days, set up in any kind of country. And then I guess finally, just on that, we're seeing demand again in specific countries and places like China. So Limitless will be launching in China to support a number of our major customers next year. So, and again, from an expert perspective, we've got thousands of active users that are experts that are working on the platform across the world. And currently, I think the latest count, we're supporting, as I say, over 50 countries, 50 markets for our client base. And we're supporting around 22 languages at this moment. Now, the languages are scalable, and whenever there's a demand for a new language, we can add that within days. But currently, it's around 22 languages. So we are seeing it on a global scale for sure.
But you've touched on something that I think is really important, because as I've seen, not all, but some of the organizations that are promoting gig as a business model, when it comes to CX delivery, the emphasis seems to be on being able to find talent and gig agents that are based in onshore demand markets. So based in the United Kingdom, based in Canada, based in the States. You see where I'm going with this. But what you're describing is the potential to leverage gig in offshore traditional markets, emerging offshore locations within the nearshore. So effectively, using gig across not just what we would associate with the domestic delivery angle, but also very much one that reaches overseas too.
Absolutely. The flexibility is the word in everything that the GigCX model provides. Flexibility in the resourcing that you can attract, the commercial model, how you deploy it, the use cases, in other words, at which point of the customer journey and what type of support, the topics, inquiry types that you handle, flexibility in the channels across everywhere. So specifically, in this instance, we've got a number of clients that are looking to be able to provide onshore support with experts that are sourced from within a customer base, so they're familiar with the products and the services. So for example, if you're a North American based company, and you only provide your subscriptions or your services or products in the North America region, and you would like to actually be resourcing that geography, but to date, for cost reasons, you've not been able to, then this is a model, because you can save 40 to 50% on your overall costs when compared to traditional models. You can get a commercial model which is similar to being that kind of offshore price, cost base, but with onshore. And that's not by paying the experts less. Let me be really clear. That's by stripping away a lot of the overheads and other costs that are often wasted in the traditional model, and making sure, actually, because experts on the GigCX platform at Limitless, one of our good gig principles is to treat everybody fairly and reward everybody fairly. And we pay over and above what an individual could earn in the market where they live. So one of the absolute sort of bars that we always have to go above is to make sure that we pay people more. So yeah, but look, there are companies that are looking for what we call a global crowd, and that includes people that are based all over the world, onshore and offshore, again, in that kind of follow the sun type approach.
So Roger, putting our cards on the table, Gig's been around now for a number of years, and I think it's become much more mainstream than it ever has been, from the perspective of how customer experience can be managed by agents using this approach. What are your experiences telling you when you're going into enterprises, perhaps that haven't leveraged Gig as of yet? What are some of the inhibitors that they're still coming up against? What are some of the perceptions that you're finding that you need to overcome that non-users might put onto the table?
Yeah, so I think a few things I would cover off here would be to say, the first thing, the good news for us is that everyone agrees that this is the future. So it's not an if, it's a when. And research that we do each year, we put out a GigCX report, an annual report. We have lots of different contributors to that report. And the research on a particular point shows that 72% of the customer service managers that were surveyed said they were planning on using GigCX in the next 2 years. So we're really seeing a lot of interest, even from those that have not yet adopted the model. So I think for those that haven't adopted it yet, and for those that have, the ones that have, I think can be more competitive in their own markets. And some of the inhibitors, I think, for me, I think there are 3 myths I'd like to bust, if I may. One is that the perception of Gig is that it's for simple tasks. Okay, simple transactions, customer has a question, you can find that in an FAQ, and then you can answer that question. That's actually not what we're seeing on the Limitless platform. We are seeing the ability to provide really specialist skills in lots of different markets. To give you an example, for some of our clients, including HP and Dell, the complexity level, the handle times can be at over 60 minutes to get a resolution to some of the complex inquiries that we're able to handle for those customers. So I think my first myth to bust is that absolutely GigCX is something where you can think about the skills that are hard to resource for, as well as the general skills, but also hard to resource for, and you can really leverage that for those kind of more complex. And as the complexity rises, I think the ability, again, come back to talent. It's really hard to find the talent and train the talent, retain the talent within a traditional contact center. So having a more flexible model attracts different kinds of people. I mean, that's one of the really interesting things, that people that would typically want to pursue a career in the contact center are not the same people that are working maybe 10 hours on a GigCX type platform. You're attracting a different pool of people. The second myth is that experts just simply cannot access client systems or see any kind of personal information. And again, there are deployments where that can be true, and it can be sensible because there's no need to access the systems or any kind of personal data. However, Limitless, for example, it can enable brands to see a GigCX model working in exactly the same way as work from home. So putting in exactly the same quality controls, security controls that you would have from a work from home agent. And the only difference really being the employment model and the kind of way that the experts are engaging with Limitless on the platform. So I think that's a really interesting one. And we can do this by locking down the devices, the workstations, and putting all those kind of security features in place. And the third myth is that you can't have service levels, because you've got this kind of autonomous crowdsourcing way of working in a true GigCX model. And again, that's simply not true. Our clients provide forecasts where we have to build the crowd with the right skill sets in order to meet the demand that's forecasted, in order to provide and sign up to the KPIs such as a speed of response, or resolution rates, customer satisfaction scores, and NPS, etc. So the three myths, it's not just simple, it's complex. You can access, client systems and see that PII data, and you can. A GigCX does deliver on the service levels. It's a fully end-to-end solution in that way.
Well, you've given some tremendous food for thought, Roger. Thank you very much for taking some time to chat with us today on the CX Files. Gig is definitely, I think, going to be very much on the minds of enterprise CX decision makers across industries moving into 2023, and certainly by all accounts across the world too. We look forward to hearing more about how Limitless is continuing to conquer the Gig CX space, and wish you well. Thanks for coming on the CX Files. Hope to have you back soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.